And with that, I will call to order our November 6th, 2024 Metropolitan Planning Organization Transportation Policy Board meeting. Please rise for our invocation and pledge, which will be led by Mr. Dwayne Archer.
Join me in prayer. Father God, we thank and praise you for the opportunity to serve such fine communities in our area. We thank you that you're there with us in every decision, that you continue to guide us, and we just praise you for that. In the holy name of Jesus, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Next on our agenda is citizen comment. I do not have any speaker cards. Is there any citizen that would like to comment? Seeing none, we will move on to the next item, approval of the August 21st, 2024 meeting minutes. Mr. McBride.
Hello, everyone. Prior to this meeting, we sent out the agenda packet that included the minutes from the August 21st, 2024 meeting. Looking for any corrections or revisions that need to be made. Now would be the time to do so, and I recommend approval.
Any corrections or comments? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Next, welcome new MPO policy board members.
As you see, we have some new faces. We have Mayor Casey, who is the mayor of Hallsville, and we also have Judge Chad Sims, who is the Harrison County judge. The Hallsville mayor is what we picked up with the new boundary that we adopted. So he had MPO 101 training, and so today was his first meeting. Judge Sims, we swapped his role from the Harrison County commissioner to be the judge, because as we go further east into Harrison County with our boundary, we felt that it was adequate to now bring the judge in and replace that instead of having the commissioner. So welcome both. He himself also had MPO 101 training as well. So today's both of their meetings today.
Great, welcome.
First meeting.
This is just my second meeting, so.
Twice has been his
All right, we're glad to have you. Thank you for being here. Next on our agenda is presentation and discussion of the Mobility 2050.
So today we have Hamza with Kimley-Horn Associates going to be presenting the Regional Thoroughfare Plan as well as the Metropolitan Transportation Plan 2050. We're going to break it up in two segments because they're two different documents, and as you'll see on the agenda, this will be a presentation with a discussion, and then next after that will be the approval of the document or consider approval of the document, and then we'll do the same thing with the MTP 2050. So I welcome Hamza Khan with Kimley-Horn to give the presentation.
Thanks, Bryan. As Bryan mentioned, we're here today to go over the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or MTP, and the Regional Thoroughfare Plan, or the RTP. So you'll hear me referring to those as MTP or RTPs. The overall overview is I'm going to give a quick overview of the two documents and then dive into the RTP first and then the MTP, as Bryan mentioned. All right, so what are the MTPs and RTPs? These are two federally mandated documents for long-range transportation planning. They're done every 5 years. The previous set was done in 2019, and the forecast or horizon year for that was 2045. We are in the process of updating that document, and so we're doing it in 2024, and the horizon year is 2050 for that. So what are the plans? The MTP has basically guiding principles around it in terms of what it's supposed to encompass and its goals. And some of these were developed based on our stakeholder meetings and stuff. So several of the goals are listed there. They're multimodal transportation, connectivity, so regional connectivity. That's the role of the MPO, is to kind of bring together various cities and kind of coordinate that transportation. Safety and security of the system, maintenance and system efficiency, economic vitality. So if you have thoroughfares that are well developed, that are not congested, that helps with economic vitality, and then as well as serving the social and environmental needs of the area. The RTP feeds into the MTP, and the RTP is where the thoroughfare plan analysis is done. So the thoroughfares are the major corridors. They're broken down into several different categories. So you have your interstates like I-20, you have your principal arterials like US 80, or major arterials like George Ritchie, and then minor and collector arterials. So The RTP takes that into account. The purpose of the RTP and the objective of it is to identify new alignments or new roads that may need to be built, where they're going to go. It's a very high-level document, and then also that helps preserve future right-of-way. So if there's a development coming in, you have a general thoroughfare plan for the region and know, okay, here is an extension of a certain road, maybe we should coordinate our development according to that. And then lastly, it also establishes different typical sections or functional classes for those roadways. So like I was mentioning, I-20 is an interstate, US Highway 80 is a principal arterial, and so on and so forth. And the typical section is basically the configuration of the roadway, number of lanes, the median width, and so on. A little bit of the timeline. So as Bryan mentioned, we got on board late last year in December of 2023, and basically the timeline is in 3-month chunks. So December to February was kind of reviewing the previous MTP, going through and developing the guiding principles and starting the travel demand modeling analysis. March through May, we held our first stakeholder meeting as well as our first public meeting, and then got some confirmation on those guiding principles, performed a needs assessment, and then started the deeper dive of the actual transportation analysis. June through August was the bulk of the lift, where we performed the financial forecast, developed an evaluation criteria matrix, and started ranking the projects from the various forecast years. And then we're in the home stretch now with September to November. We had our second public meeting to go back with our updates to the public with. We drafted the MTP and the RTP documents, and then today is, I guess, the day for the adoption. So we're in the process of finalizing those two documents. So starting with the RTP, major updates to the RTP, expansion of the MPO boundary, as Bryan already mentioned, with the latest census results, the boundary expanded to include Hallsville, so that is included in this update. As a result of that, the thoroughfare is expanded, and as part of every MTP and RTP update, we go through the process of updating the demographics as well. So that forecast is also based off of Texas Demographic Center, and that was done in a previous project. So here is the updated MPO boundary. So what you see in the green is the original boundary, and then what you see in the orange is what was annexed as part of 2050. As part of the RTP I mentioned, we do the transportation analysis in there. So part of it is safety and part of it is congestion and transportation related. This is a brief overview of crashes within the MPO boundary. So green means lower density of crashes, red means more concentration, and the orange dots you see are locations of fatal crashes. Most of the crashes, if you see, are concentrated in kind of the core area and the Longview area. Part of it also has to do with, more traffic leads to more exposure of crashes as well. And then majority of the crashes are focused around your major roadways such as Highway 80, Loop 281, I-20. So that's where you see a lot of crashes. In terms of our transportation analysis, we performed the analysis on the larger boundary of the area, so it actually includes Kilgore in the model. However, Kilgore is not part of the MPO boundary, but it is included in the transportation model. We always run 3 scenarios to the horizon year. One is no build, so if you did nothing, what would happen? So the network as it is. If you then build on top of that existing plus committed projects, so projects that are about to roll in within the next 5 to 10 years, and then build out includes future financial forecast related projects. And I'll tie that back into the forecast portion once we go through the MTP, but on the RTP, those are the 3 scenarios we analyze. So the first analysis is 2050, and we use the term level of service. It's basically a way of saying the amount of degradation. We graded A through F, kind of like school. If you get an F, it's a failing grade, or you have congestion. Basically, you have more traffic than the road itself can handle. Anything you see in red there, and note again, this is 2050, so 25 years from now. Anything you see in red there is basically over capacity, meaning that within a 24-hour period, it's considered failing for majority of that period. Main points are Highway 80, I-20, State Highway 31 coming into Longview off of I-20, 300 going up towards Gilmer, US 259 on the north side, and then US 80 kind of spots throughout the whole corridor, as well as US 271 near Gladewater. So with the existing plus committed projects, and I'll go over these projects, as I mentioned, in the MTP in terms of what projects are actually existing and committed. So those are projects that funding has been allocated for. They're in the process of being either designed or in construction. So with those projects, the main ones are focused around Gladewater. So it's the US 271 State Loop 485 that goes around Gladewater and then connects on the north side. That's one of the projects. George Ritchie is included in that. So you see some improvements, but some of the congestion is still there, like on I-20 as well as State Highway 31. I forgot to mention, but State Highway 149 near Lakeport as well, that's congested. And then in the build out, what we do is basically forecast the funds out to 2050. So generally the forecast is done in a 4-year increment, a 10-year increment, and the last 15-year increment. So with that, the leftover funds within that 15-year period, those then get allocated to projects that score well. And I will go through that within the MTP. So with that, there's improvements on I-20. I-20 is one of the major projects that TxDOT Tyler District is working on currently. And then there's some additional projects on US 80. There is some additional projects on State Highway 300. So you kind of see that segment improve in this scenario. And then some additional projects on, I already mentioned US 80. So, and then State Highway 42 is one of the other projects as well. So that's a widening there in White Oak. So that's kind of what encompasses in the analysis, and then the result of the RTP is to basically provide the actual updated regional thoroughfare plan. So on the left you see is what was done in 2045. On the right is basically the updated version of that. And you can see the boundaries extended. So we've extended the thoroughfares out further east. There was really no change in terms of additional thoroughfares except for FM 450, which got designated a principal arterial based on feedback from stakeholders during one of the stakeholder meetings. Other than that, it's mainly just extension of current thoroughfares. With that, I will hand it to you.
So any questions regarding the regional thoroughfare plan?
No. I don't think so.
So the document, we did send out the draft version, I think October 1st to y'all. And we started the public involvement, 30-day public comment period for both these documents on October 4th and concluded it on November 4th. Didn't receive any public input or public comments regarding the completion of this document. This was outside of actually the development of the document, which is a federal requirement to have basically their last minute of anytime we do a revision or amendment to any of these documents, we have to allow the public to provide additional feedback. We didn't receive any additional comments. During that time period, staff did review and provide comments ourselves back to the consultant. A lot of them were more like grammatical or updating some photos and stuff. There's a couple projects that did get added that Hamza will touch on in the MTP. However, there wasn't really many significant changes for the RTP, and I'll go over those changes, and he will as well in the MTP. So kind of going back to the RTP, I would recommend approving this. Our technical committee did review this document and do recommend approval, so I'm asking for that today from y'all. So
Okay. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of the RTP. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
And a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the RTP, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? RTP is approved. We'll move on to the presentation and discussion of the MTP.
All right, I'm back. So the MTP, what the major differences between the MTP and that was done in 2019 versus what was done in 2024, some of those are repeats as a result because RTP feeds into the MTP, so updated MPO boundary, which shows up again in the MTP, updated thoroughfare plan and demographics, which show up in the MTP again. And then we added additional content on safety. There's already a component of safety in the previous MTP, but moving forward, there's more of a focus from the federal and the state government to provide additional emphasis on vulnerable road users, or which are considered pedestrians and cyclists. So we added additional content and safety analysis related to that I'll touch briefly on within this presentation as well. We added additional content to the multimodal chapter, so that's where the safety analysis goes in. And then also under transportation considerations, we added some considerations for electrical vehicles as part of the NEVI funding that the federal government is rolling out, and in terms of what TxDOT has done so far for planning for some of the charging stations in all the counties and so forth. So the objectives of the MTP, I mentioned when we started, it's a long-range transportation planning document. I'd say that three key things we're really trying to get out of the MTP are help guide infrastructure development and prioritize projects, enhance the overall regional mobility, and then as a result improve economic vitality, and then also do a financial forecast to see what projects can be prioritized and allocated and built within the next 5-10 years as time rolls on. So what has changed since the document was sent to you all earlier in October? As Bryan mentioned earlier, there's staff comments that were received. So the revisions that have been made have been updated financial forecasts. So there's been 2 additional projects added as some additional coordination with TxDOT Tyler and Atlanta District. So as part of the MPO boundary extending, we decided to include the I-20 project that's partially within the MPO boundary. It starts at FM 450 and goes to State Highway 43. That project is partially funded. And then we also decided to include State Highway 149 near Lakeport, as that is an area that is projected to be congested, and there are some additional safety concerns in that area as well. We revised the performance management chapter. So as part of federal guidances, you have to have performance metrics for your MTPs, which basically means you track on your safety targets, your pavement targets, your bridge and replacement targets. So there's several targets that are developed by the Federal Highway Administration. And so previously, in previous iterations, all those targets were included in the MTP. The MTP had to be amended every 2 years because they're also included in the TIP. So what we've done is we've kind of concised that chapter and just shown like what performance measures the MPO is tracking, and then refer them to go to the TIP to see the actual targets that the MPO is trying to achieve. So that way, when updates have to be made, only the TIP can get updated, and we don't have to go through and update and amend the MTP every time. Since the MTP is updated every 5 years, TIP is updated every 2 years. And then lastly, I briefly mentioned this, but as part of the safety analysis, we also included some of the ped and bike projects that are part of the overall bike plan that the MPO did back in 2018, and some additional projects that were of interest. So those are the changes that have been made to the document since October 1st. As part of any MTP, you have to do public engagement, as Bryan mentioned earlier. So we had 2 public meetings. One was on April 17th. That was kind of our kickoff meeting to show them and kick off the process. And then the September 17th one was to provide them the update once all the analysis and forecast was done. We also had a website up where we received comments and had a survey. So we received over 100 comments, and I think the survey was about similar in terms of the number of people that filled out the survey. Both of those documents, the responses and things, it will be something that will be provided, so that can be accessed as well if anyone wants to see those responses. And then we also had stakeholder steering committee meetings. We had 3 of those. first one, the kickoff was in March, and then we had two kind of in June, July when we were doing the evaluation as well as the forecast. So the content that was added, so this was updated in the 2050 MTP, previously not there, but this is crashes specifically to ped and bike crashes. Again, similar to the overall crashes, the focus is pretty close to in the Longview area or the core of Longview. The crashes you see are along US 80, Loop 281. I think those are both areas for vehicular and pedestrian cyclist crashes. There are hotspots for both of them, and then some kind of spread it out around the overall area. And I forgot to mention this, but all crash data is from TxDOT. They have a database that you can download this data from, and the years are 2019 to 2023. So the meat of the MTP, which is the financial forecast, the project evaluation, and then the project selection. So the financial forecast is kind of 3 steps. It includes the transportation improvement program, improvement program that the MPO updates every 2 years. So the current tip that was used was for 2025 to 2028. It's a 4-year time horizon, and that includes basically your short-term projects that are going to be incorporated. And those get updated on a rolling 2-year basis. The UTP, which is the Unified Transportation Program, that is the state's led, kind of you can think of it, the state's version of the TIP. Their time horizon is 10 years, so they go from 2025 to 2034. And that includes only on-system state projects, and those are categorized by district. So Atlanta District, and Tyler District. And what we do is we allocate whichever of those projects are within the MPO boundaries. Those are the projects that then make it to our financial forecast. And then the last item is future funding. We basically extrapolate historical funding that the MPO has received and project that out for the last 25 years or 15 years, which goes from 2035 to 2050. So that all gets put together, we derive a financial forecast, and then that's kind of the table that comes out of it. So the way you want to think of it is the short-term funding is more of a known funding. The further out you go, the less known it becomes. So the first column is the funding categories. There's 12 funding categories that that the MPO can leverage, and the second column is the TIP. So those are all the programmed projects. Most of these are on-system projects or TxDOT projects that have been, so like George Ritchie is one of them, State Highway 42 is one of them. So those are more programmed projects. Maybe they're already in design phase or are going to be in design phase or about to be constructed. So those are more of the known projects. The third column is the UTP, so that's driven by the state, and those are based off of what TxDOT has developed in their UTP for the 2 districts that the MPO is within, which is TxDOT Atlanta and Tyler District. It doesn't include all projects within that district because the MPO doesn't encompass all the district's boundaries. And then the last column, that's purely a forecast based on historical. So the purpose of that column is to see, okay, potentially what is the remainder of funding that is available, and based on our project evaluation criteria matrix, what projects would be a priority for the MTP or for the MPO if maybe a project falls out of the UTP. So we score all the projects that are in the financial forecast. So that way, as projects move around, which they inevitably do, you kind of have a project ready, like, hey, I know that we have this project that could be a good candidate and it's scored well. So that's the overall forecast. How do we go about scoring the projects? So we developed an evaluation criteria matrix that was shown to the stakeholder meeting, or the stakeholders, and got their buy-off. But there's basically 7 scoring areas. So we took into the bigger the size of the shape, the more the weight of that criteria. The smaller the size, the smaller the weight. So congestion, safety, and traffic were the higher weight criterias. And then multimodal and infrastructure were rated the same. And then connection to amenities. So amenities, what that means is close to a bike or hike and bike trail or other amenities. And then project readiness basically means if there was a schematic and environmental or some kind of design plans already in the work, it got extra score. So based on all of those, we develop an overall score, and then each project gets assigned that score. So this is a very large table. I believe you have some printouts for that, but I'll kind of break it down for you. So the top third is that bucket that I was mentioning, the TIP and the UTP. So the TIP projects are mainly the known projects that are definitely going to be moving forward. So your George Ritchie Road, US 271, State Loop 485 around Gladewater, I-20, the left interchange at State Highway 31, State Highway 42, and then after 2028, you start getting into the UTP projects. So those are kind of the UTP projects that are listed within and this is the on-system list. So that's kind of the first third is your TIP and UTP projects. The 2035 to 2050, those are projects that are selected based on the scoring. So that's based off the funding forecast. So we forecasted, I think it showed close to $1 billion based on historical funding that the MPO has received. So what could the MPO do with those $1 billion? And those are the projects based on the scoring that would be good options for the MPO to use in terms of their funding. And then the remainder, the bottom third, is basically unfunded needs. And those are based on those level of service maps I showed you in terms of facilities that might not be operating the best, or they could also be some of the facilities need more safety improvements or things like that. So those are unfunded needs that are listed. These are all on-system projects. We also do off-system projects. Mainly off-system projects are for City of Longview. The smaller adjacent cities have off-system facilities, but they're not part of the overall regional thoroughfare plan because majority cities like White Oak or cities like Gladewater, although they have projects like State Highway 42 or US 271, the additional local streets are not part of the regional network. They're a local collector, so they don't fall within the threshold of that funding. But City of Longview has some major arterials or minor arterials that are still considered as a regional connector. So those are listed in there. These are still unfunded needs, so there's not any funds that are currently allocated to them. And these are projects that the city had brought forth. Other cities are also welcome to bring forth projects that can be added to this list as well. But that's kind of how, if you're wondering why only City of Longview projects are listed there, that's kind of the reason for it. And then we go into group projects. So group projects are generally projects that are on a smaller scale project, so it's the bottom table, but mostly related to maintenance or signal upgrades. And so turn lane improvements, so those kind of get lumped into group projects because it's too much if you break each individual signal upgrade or signal timing improvement down. So those get lumped together, and those can be within the whole MPO area. So signal improvements could be for any of the cities within the MPO's boundary. And then the last set of projects are transit and ped and bike projects. Transit projects are a lot of capital and operating expense related projects. So those are related to the fixed route that the transit service offers in Longview, as well as some of the capital expenses. And then the funding for those comes from federal and state dollars, and then some of it comes from City of Longview as well. And then the last set is the ped bike projects that have come out of the bike plan and additional planning that the city has done. With that, this map kind of shows the list, and those are the projects on the right are the short-term, I should say, 2025 to 2034 projects. So short-term is relative in the public world, but those are short-term projects. So George Ritchie, two projects on George Ritchie going all the way from Gilmer Road to White Oak Road. I think the break is on Pine Road in White Oak, I believe. It's separated in two different buckets. And then I-20 interchange improvements, I-20 bridge replacement, the Gladewater improvements for US 271, State Loop 485, State Highway 31 widening, and then State Highway 42 widening. And then the projects in blue are kind of the unfunded needs. And then one of the other things that the FHWA kind of requires us to look at is impact of these projects. They want to make sure that the projects are not disproportionately occurring in undisadvantaged areas. This is disadvantaged census tracts that have been developed by FHWA. What they basically take into account is accessibility to transportation options. They have a bunch of different factors like households, one-car households or no-car households, income levels, and so on and so forth. So majority of the projects that, that the MPO or the MTP is recommending are within the disadvantaged census tracts. It's mainly to make sure that, that the funds are being shared equally amongst the whole MPO. So with that, are there any questions? I know that was a lot to digest.
Any questions or comments?
Good job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So there was a light read that we provided you on October 1st. We provided hard copies in front of you of the final version. I'm sure all of you read that, and there's going to be a test right after this. So thank you for all of you showing up. But thank you, Hamza, and your team for assisting with that. It was a lot of work to be done to develop this plan, and so we're very appreciative to be able to engage with professional service like that. With the staff of only 2 at the Longview MPO, it's a difficult task to kind of undertake this, where we need the outside experience of the engineering as well as the technical side of more of like the GIS, the analysts, stuff like that, as well as the public outreach as well. It's hard to crowd a room when you only have 2 people, and so I'm glad and very thankful for his team. If there's no questions, I'd like to move on to recommending approval of this document. It will go into effect November 10th. We've kept this very consistent throughout our other documents of that we have to adopt the new document every 5 years, and so the last one was adopted November 10th, 2019, or went into effect that date. I think it was adopted on Halloween last time. But anyways, so we'll keep it consistent with being November 10th being the effective date. However, it will be actually adopted on today if so choose. So I would ask for that motion from y'all.
Okay, next on our agenda is approval of the MTP. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? MTP is approved. We'll move on to staff comment.
Perfect. So a little bit lighter information. This is a new thing for me. I want to provide. Every time we start a new fiscal year, I like to provide information of what exactly we're going to be doing for the upcoming fiscal year. So one of the things that we touched on in regards to the MTP was the Hamza mentioned the NEVI program, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan. We brought up this conversation a couple years ago when I approved the 2-year or when we got the 2-year budget approved of whether you're for or against it, there's money coming in, and so we have to develop this plan to kind of help guide the state to allocate those funds and allocate where those projects are going to happen within our boundary. So here kicking off this month, we're starting the time frame, the Gantt charts and all that internally to start the public involvement for that and seek input from that community, that demographic or that community, as well as normal or non-EV users. Sorry, I think that's where I was looking forward. To kind of cultivate where these charging locations need to go. We're projected with the funds that we're going to receive, we should receive maybe, for sure, 1, maybe 2 project locations of where we actually can put this charging unit at. So this process, like Hamza mentioned, it's handled by the state. They're the ones who's cultivating, the submittals of the RFQs, RFPs, and stuff. The job of the MPO is to tell them where we want it at. We got to decide that study area, and so we need the public involvement. We need the data to kind of help guide us into that decision making. So we're not just picking willy-nilly across the map, saying, "Oh, we need it there, we need it there." We want where are people going to go? Are they going to go to amenities? Do they want to be on do they want like a trail? Like Longview's got a big trail network. Do they want to park and charge and take a hike? Or what do they want to do? And so that's the feedback we're going to be starting to engage, looking to conclude. Don't hold me to it, but possibly bring it back to our April-May policy board meeting. I can't remember the exact date off the top of my head. Additionally, we'll be creating our next year's 2 years budget. Like I said, the UPWP is a 2-year budget, and so we'll be creating that document here soon, looking to get that approved prior to us going to the fiscal agent of City of Longview for their blessing as well. The responsibility of the fiscal agent is to provide the necessary funds. They get reimbursed through the Federal Highway Act, whatever it is at that time. Additionally, we'll continue to be going through working groups, and so I serve on a lot of the working groups at the state level, going to the lovely place Austin and visiting the Sassany campus, and so definitely attending those. And we also meet at the state level for our MPOs. We're one of 24 MPOs now with the state, and so we constantly meet with their directors and to ensure that we're like-minded and similar, like we're doing things to make the state better. We've always pride ourselves that just because a project doesn't happen here, at least it's happening somewhere in the state. And so we're very, very thankful here recently that we're going to get a lot of money in 2025 and 2026 and 2027, and it's going to tip off a little bit. I think someone coined the term that we're going to have the high 3, so the high 5 that Dallas has. And so we're very excited what's going to happen in the next few years. It's going to be busy. I might not be the favorite person, but after the fact, hopefully that the MPO is. Additionally, we'll go through some additional staff training to ensure that the model is up to date, as well as to ensure that we understand how to utilize that. So if we get special requests from any of our partner agencies about widening a road, closing a road, they know who to turn to help make sure that we're making sure our network is not going to be a hindrance because of that. And so we do help out a lot with different cities and different the county as well to help guide that conversation about making sure that our network stays intact. So that it's a plug for y'all if you did not know that we do that. We do that in-house, or do we ask for professional services? If we cannot fulfill that request, we'll find a way to make it work. Additionally, regional meetings, myself and Scott with Longview Transit, we both handle, or we go to regional meetings to ensure that our voice is heard, whether at the transit level as well as transportation. And so with that, that's kind of what fiscal year 25 brings us, and I'd be happy to, if there's anything else, now would be time to ask me, or I can get you an answer after the fact.
Great. Any questions or comments? Good job.
Awesome. Thank you.
And with that, our meeting will be adjourned.
Yes, ma'am.
Good job.